Hey, family. Once again, I am me, John Selders, and I am pleased and godly proud and absolutely over the moon, full of joy and gratefulness that I am able to do what it is that I do, and to do it in the context of this platform, where I get to talk to a bunch of people, most of which I really like. Some of them I shouldn't say that, but I am saying it anyway. I get to talk to people who I like, who are smart, bright, brilliant, who are leaders in their own right, who get the opportunity to share in that same kind of joy. And listen, I am tonight pleased again to be joined with colleagues of faith, colleagues of justice, colleagues who are they are lifting up their voices out in the cold. Did y'all know it's cold in Connecticut? It's cold in Connecticut. If you're not in here in Connecticut, we are in the cold season, and so there's something about committing oneself to a cause. It's something about doing something for some others. It's something to it when you can say there's something wrong, and I'm going to put a little skin in the game and get out here and do something. So a few weeks ago, and I'm going to let them talk about it and let them share the story. But let me invite to this platform my colleagues of faith, the Reverend Ken Salati, the Reverend Terry Dennehy, and I almost called you the Reverend Michael. Rabbi Michael. Now, welcome to Relevant Conversations. And why don't you all say just a word of greeting to our folk?
Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Bishop John, for this invitation to talk about an initiative that Michael and Terry really began. And I'm happy to be here. I'm a UCC pastor. I've served in a variety of settings of the church, and have really been happy to be part of this initiative with my colleagues who are on the screen with us tonight.
And thank you, Kent, for connecting us with John Selders. Good to be here. My name is Terry Dennehy, she, her pronouns. I'm the minister at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Stamford, Connecticut. Glad to be here.
And I'll jump into really grateful, Kent, for connecting us to the Bishop and really for being able to share this space. Thanks for having me on. My name is Michael Knopf. I am the rabbi of Temple Bethel here in Stamford, been in Stamford now for about a year and a half. Came here from Richmond, Virginia, where I was at another Temple Bethel for 10 years before coming here. But it's really a joy to be here and to be among such incredible colleagues and partners in justice.
Well, thank you very much for all of you saying yes to joining us tonight and doing a little, what I'm calling a little report about Moral Monday CT Stanford version and Stanford edition. Listen, for those of you who don't know Connecticut well, we are a small state, but we are a powerful, active state. And I had heard tell of places like this. I'm a Midwesterner originally, so coming to New England was a little bit of culture shock. It was a little bit of culture shock, and of course. Reverend Salata, you've known me the longest. I've known you probably the whole time since I've been here, and I took me a little minute to adjust to the frozen chosen. Some would call us the Chili Willies. Some might call us. But what I've also understood that we are in New England and here in Connecticut in particular are a passionate bunch of folk. And we speak our minds, whether Christian or Jewish or Muslims, in faith communities, we hear from the people. Kid looking like what? We hear from the people. and what I have taken as a real gift is that when it comes to something that folk have some feeling about, we'll get together, we'll pull a group of folk together, and the next thing you know, something will get started, right? Whether that's in the church, somebody say, well, we don't like what y'all did, and they go down the street and start another church. 400 years later, those churches are right next door to each other. It doesn't happen that way within Jewish synagogues, I'm sure.
That doesn't happen, no.
It doesn't happen that way. I happen to know that's not the truth. And you probably have some of the same hundreds of years of and then what I like, they forget the beef. We forget what the real struggle was, and then we kind of are there together. So I'm appreciative of that. So Terry or Michael, why don't you all begin by sharing with folk what happened?
Sure. Well, first of all,
that got More Monday started down in Stanford.
First of all, I just want to say I'm actually from New York. I'm a Rochester born and raised, and I live in Poughkeepsie. And although I serve in the Stanford congregation for the past 4.5 years, I get the culture shock right away, even crossing that border from New York to Connecticut. But I give Michael the credit for connecting us to the Moral Mondays movement and for this idea that we need to stand up and gather on the courthouse steps. But I will say it's not the first time that I have personally been to that courthouse. I have been to that courthouse several times over the past several months doing court accompaniment with immigrants and people who are scared. And we have seen and witnessed ICE agents grabbing people in front of the courthouse on their way to court in the parking garage. That courthouse has therefore become a symbol of this time of immorality and injustice and targeting of marginalized people. And although the laws have changed with the strengthening of the Trust Act, we felt that coming together in that space, it was very important for all of the reasons of this time, for immigrant justice, for the attacks on the targeted and the marginalized people of color, brown and Black people, and so many other reasons. And I'll let Michael speak more because, it was your idea to actually do this weekly witness. So.
Well, I appreciate that, but I've no pride of authorship. It was really in large part inspired by your incredible and holy work with accompaniment, and of so many of our colleagues and partners of faith and conscience in the area, doing that really important work and bearing witness to some of the inhumanity, the dehumanization, the acts of injustice that have taken place in that context, which have mirrored so much of what we've seen around the country. And you always think, well, like that's, you see it on the news, you're like, well, that's happening out there. That's that's happening in California and in Texas or whatever, and it's jarring to see it happening right around the corner, and noting that the place that is supposed to be the seat of justice in our area has become really such a symbol of injustice because of this. It really kind of brought that issue to the forefront. So what we were hoping to do is, and in conversation with Terry, saying, how can we shine a light on what's happening there with these court cases, with ICE actions. How do we draw people's attention to the inhumanity and the immorality of what's happening, and awaken people's conscience in a way that they may not, if they can't commit or don't want to commit to be a part of the accompaniment program, if they're just not seeing it, because a lot of those instances and cases haven't been very visible. I think that we're in it used to be that all politics was local, and now really all politics is national. So people don't see a lot about what's happening in their own backyard too. So they might be upset and energized about what's going on across the country, but not knowing that they're that the same conditions exist here in Stamford. So in conversation with Terry, I said, well, how can we lift this up for folks? How can we make it harder to look away, and harder for people not to speak out and to express their conscience, and to awaken their conscience about what's happening here, and connecting it to the broader moral landscape of what's happening in this country. And so what we settled on was gathering people of faith and conscience weekly at the courthouse, to pray together, to speak out together, to energize one another, to encourage one another to get involved in different ways on this issue related to immigration, but also more broadly on the real spirit of cruelty and dehumanization that we're seeing kind of sweeping the country. And I long admired the Moral Mondays movement, and Reverend Barber had been involved a little bit in the Poor People's Campaign in Virginia. And it just so happened that my day off from the congregation is on Monday, and so I have a lot of availability on Monday. And I said, well, how about we do Moral Mondays? And we get together on Mondays at the courthouse. And it worked for Terry, for a number of folks, and the stars just started aligning. I like what you said, Bishop. I mean, it's really amazing to see in Stamford and Connecticut when that the people show up. We just started getting the word out to colleagues, and people were energized. And we spread the message around our networks and our communities, and people started showing up. Terry, you weren't able to be there today, but it was a really strong crowd today. It feels like it's growing week to week, and more people from across the multi-faith landscape in the area are coming, and lay people and clergy alike. It's really inspiring, been really powerful.
Yeah,
and we had someone cross the border, Terry, from Westchester County, a Lutheran pastor came today. And I didn't have a chance, Michael, I don't know if you did, to ask him like how he heard about it. We're now broadening the network of folks who want to make a witness at the courthouse, and it really does stand for a symbol. And people come by. Some guy came by today and was looking at us, and I was wondering what he was doing. He was kind of all dressed up, and I thought, here's my suspicions, right? But then he started. Joe got in, and Joe Rose is part of the planning group. He got in and was asking us to repeat a couple of phrases after him, and this man was doing it as well. So I was like so happy that we haven't had any problems. Security walks by us, but they don't say anything. They smile, they wave. So we obviously have the right to assemble, and that's really an important part of what this witness has been so far. We're 5 weeks doing it. One of the pastors last week said, "Why aren't you doing this in July?" Because it's so cold out. But it shows the fortitude, right, of people willing to stand outside in the cold, and to be a witness in this nation that has been built by migrants, where the real border crisis, I think, is not who's trying to get in, but how many of us are willing to stand up for those who are already here? That's a part of what the witnessing is. It's not just watching in the purest sense of being a witness. It's taking responsibility for what we know. And once you begin to know more and more about how this impacts our siblings, you can't be silent.
What I was going to say, this is absolutely at the heart of what the Moral Monday movement was and still is, right? We've been active for 10 years here in Connecticut, and got kind of our start. I'm from St. Louis, and so when stuff went down in Ferguson, I grew up in a town just west of Ferguson, little African American town. In fact, the first chartered African American city in the state of Missouri, Kinloch, for Black folk. So I had I had kind of an obligation to go home, and it was there. Bishop Barber, he came during the time we were there, and we got into conversation about what this Moral Monday is. I was watching from afar what those clergy were doing in North Carolina, when they said, "Listen, let's go to the State House and sing and pray." And for Monday after Monday after Monday, dozens and dozens of people got arrested who were faith folk, and that began the Moral Monday movement. And so then there were these state groups started to kind of pop up. And what he said to me is, what you've done that they weren't able to do at the beginning is make the link to the Black Lives Matter movement. And so that's what we were able to do because of the connection we had down in St. Louis and in Ferguson specifically. But this thing has mushroomed. I like you was pretty amazed when you said, "Hey, I called some of my friends, and Kent, you were one of them, and they, come on and be with us for a minute." And the next thing you know, it's 40, 50, 60 folk, and here we are. Our first action, we had about 100 people, and we went and did a die-in in City Hall in Hartford here in Connecticut. It happened, and listen, we were off to the races and had a big thing show up. 17 of us got arrested. We blocked up the streets I tell people all the time, the name of the organization is Moral Monday. When are we likely gonna do something? What day of the week? On a Monday. And so, we're not trying to be hidden. I mean, there was all kinds of narratives that we were some rogue group out of Ferguson. That was the first thing that was said of us. We're some rogue group. And I was like, okay, that would be cute if we were both rogue and out of Ferguson. I've been here for 20 years. I don't know about rogue and out of Ferguson, but it has been interesting to watch how what we call in a faith context bearing witness, right? What what that actually means. And it means a number of different things. Sometimes it is using our voice. A whole lot of times it's just being present to folk, right? And it's just seeing the humanity in somebody else. And of course, yeah, who didn't come here? Other than Native Americans, we all came here through some water on a boat. Some of us were voluntary, some of us were involuntary, and yet here we all are. I mean, Kent, you're from a community that showed up because there was persecution back at the house, back in the homeland. I tell people, I used to tell people when you were kind of, you were muckety muck around here. He's from the people that actually speak a foreign language. Their church still speaks a different kind of language. So it is this bearing witness. It is, what does it mean to stand just with other folk and say, listen, this is just not happening. Dr. King said it best. He said, we're tied together in a mutual garment of destiny, right? He was, the question was asked, why are you here? You're an outside agitator. And he said, one, I was invited to come here. This was during the Birmingham campaign. He said, first of all, my friend asked me to come. Oh, y'all remember I used to pastor in Montgomery. Now I know I'm in Atlanta now, right? But how could I sit idly by with an invitation from a friend and from a group of brothers and sisters, siblings? And how can I sit idly by and just, be somewhere just removed from what's happening, just across the street, around the corner, across a border, if you will. And then this famous quote comes out of it: "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." That's the context of that very famous quote. So I feel like in this case, ICE agents, we ain't had no immigration problem here in Connecticut. I mean, the folk, what's interesting to me about this whole thing here in Connecticut, most of the folk that are actually apprehended are apprehended at the courthouse. Right. They're showing up, to be a part. They've been asked to come in and do all of the steps, do all of the stuff. They are being law abiding. They're not hiding or in secret somewhere. They're showing up to their arranged and prearranged scheduled meeting and then get pounced on. I mean, the video and the images I saw in this particular case that you all called yourselves together around was just deplorable. It was horrible. It was horrible. And I feel like this is what I feel like, that our immigrant rights groups have been fighting this fight a really long time. Right. And they've been fighting this fight largely by themselves. They've been, it's just been a small group of them. There's 7, 8, 10 immigrant rights groups across the state of Connecticut, and they all work together. They all know each other. The leaders know each other, and they've been sharing and shepherding the load for a good long time. And so finally, some of us have begun to say, you don't have to do it by yourselves. Let's get in where we fit in. And if it is just on a regular basis, every Monday at noon at that particular courthouse, it's a state courthouse, right? Am I right? It's
yes.
The state courthouse.
Yeah, it's Stamford Superior Court. Yeah.
Right. Just show up and we'll be here for an hour. And, Brother Michael, there's a passage of New Testament scripture. Jesus asked this question: can you just watch with me for 1 hour? Can you just be with me for an hour? So I feel like we can just stand in the cold for an hour and then go get some coffee and go run to your car and turn the heat on. Right. Right. That bearing witness, that's the least. We're talking about the least we could do. And in fact, what I believe bearing witness ultimately helps us do, it helps us lift. It helps us lift. And I think when we're engaged and involved, and in fact, I think our traditions call for us to lift, right? And not just to lift not just to lift our own, but to lift others as well. Reverend Terry, you wanted to get in?
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm thinking of this is a solidarity initiative. This is we're in this together. Absolutely. And when you're talking about lifting, I'm thinking of when we're gathering, this is a faithful witness and praying and singing. We do have someone playing the guitar and we're out there singing together, Dr. Ev. And we are, then this was part of King's movement. We don't see it as much in a lot of the, rallies and protests. And I think that makes this, and I was also part of Poor People's Campaign, inspired by Barber, the Moral Mondays movement in New York. I did that a few years ago. And the idea of bringing together song and, prayer into your witness with faith leaders and others together, it lifts us, it lifts our spirits as well, and shows us that there's hope in this. And I think that's what I feel when I'm out there with the other people, faith leaders of many different faiths and new people showing up every time, that we're not giving up. We're sticking with it through the long haul. So
Yeah.
I think Bishop, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, please, Ken, go ahead.
Bishop, I think, you talked about the history of this, and I remember an anti-ICE demonstration in Hartford where a bunch of us got arrested at I forget where we were, but that this was like 7-8 years ago. So it's not a new struggle, but what is different, obviously, is the militarization that is now taking place. And the way in which, we've all seen the horrific videos of our neighbors being thrown to the ground. And then you look at the statistics that don't lie, right? That say that 3 out of 4 people who are being detained by ICE are not criminals. They have no criminal record. That the sweeping of the streets for brown people is a strategy of a corrupt regime, right? That we can't look the other way. That every migrant is our neighbor and is not a problem, and that cruelty at the border in our communities violates the deepest of our faith traditions, and that's part of the moral, if you will, side of this. And people kind of shy away because of the wedding of Christians to nationalism, but I don't think those folk are showing up at our Moral Monday. I think to be a witness is to say, I am not going to let your story be buried in silence. And that's part of what we need to do, that the militarization of ICE and the way in which it's being selectively used to harm people is what we have to stand up for and speak out about.
Yeah, I mean, I echo, really everything that both Terry and Ken said there. A few things that stick out to me. One is, to Ken's point, this what we're aiming to do is to reclaim the language of faith and morality, and to say, what I think what distinguishes what we're trying to do from other kind of protests that are out there, other kind of actions that may be out there that have their place. And are meaningful, but we're not arguing the politics of this. We're not arguing even about the legalities of this, although those are relevant considerations. We're trying to address this from a deeper and higher level. I mean, you're talking about King's letter from Birmingham jail, where he talks about, there are 2 kinds of laws: just laws and unjust laws, and all just laws are laws that align with God's law, that uplift human personality, and unjust laws are laws that degrade human personality. And we have we're duty bound to obey just laws, and we're duty bound, similarly, to disobey unjust laws. And so what we're trying to shine a light on is, there's not a one-to-one relationship between what's legal and what's moral. To start with, and what we want to be engaged on the plane of morality, and then to name on top of that a lot of what is going on is also not legal, right? So even if you were to engage on the level of legality, we're still not playing on that playing field, and so I think that's really important. I mean, it's love what you said, Ken, about these are neighbors that we're talking about. And they're, it's not surprising that the same administration who blatantly calls immigrants from certain countries garbage, human garbage, and blatantly talks about the criminality, the inherent criminality essentially of all immigrants or all people of color, which that has routinely come out of folks within the administration, that they can't simultaneously argue, yeah, but we're only going after the hardened criminals, because they've already revealed their cards to them. Anybody who looks a certain way, anybody who comes from a certain place, is, by definition, in their view, a hardened criminal. What we want to say is that no, all of these people, all of our neighbors, wherever you come from, you are a child of God. You are equally and infinitely created in the divine image, just as we all are. And we are going to stand, like Reverend Terry said, in solidarity with one another to say that when our neighbor, a fellow child of God, is harmed, we are harmed too. And I think to Kent's point as well, I love this language of witness. And what I also think about, from at least in Jewish tradition, Kent, you brought this up, is not just observing, but lifting up the voices and lifting up the stories. In Jewish tradition, someone who bears witness to a crime is obligated to testify. You cannot have witnessed a crime and stay silent and avoid going and giving your testimony about what had happened. It's a miscarriage of justice to do that, and you could become liable for the sin that you're refusing to testify against if you're in that situation. So what we want to try to do here is first of all, bear witness ourselves, bring others into the community of bearing witness, and then also to be able to say, now that we see this, now that we can look at it clear-eyed, we have to do something about it. We have to say something about it. We have to raise our voices and take action. Go, whether it's go into the streets or go to the ballot box or go to the state house, whatever it is. Accompany people as they go to court, be involved in mutual aid efforts. I mean, there's ways large and small, but to really lift up the sense that silence is complicity, and there's no such thing as to use the language again from King, right? You can't stand idly by. There's no moral neutrality here. If you're neutral, you're already picking a side.
That's absolutely right. I was going to lift up this idea of moral. It's not left or right, right? It's not. It's what's right and what's wrong. And I love there's a passage of Christian scripture. We'll use it that talks about, well, what's your problem? Because you don't have a need of a teacher. Right? There's something kind of innate in what's right and wrong. For example, you can listen to, I was just saying something to someone today. You could pay attention to your mom or your dad or your grandmother or grandparent. That stove is hot. Or you could not. You will learn a lesson that then you will not have no need at all of anybody teaching you. You touch that hot stove and you get burned one time, and you've learned a lesson, right? There's something, I believe, that is really set in us, right? Part of it is to kind of test the limits, but then there are other parts of us that just, what's right. If you pause and just slow down, you actually will come to your own conclusions, and you'll know what's right and you'll know what's wrong. And in some of these things, it can get, it's complicated. Relationships are. Some are. Yes. And yet there are just some things when it comes to the humanity of every single person. There's something that just is it's unarguable. You can't argue somebody's humanity. And this idea, if they look brown, they're a criminal. Or okay, or they come from S-hole countries because they African. Yeah, that's something just hateful and wrong. And if we want to talk about what's wrong, we've never had a president 30-something counts felony. If we're gonna talk law, we're gonna talk law. We're living in something we've never actually lived in before, and yet, okay, so here we are. What then can you all say in this movement here in Stamford, as people start to pay attention to what you're doing, and I'm a witness. You keep doing it for a while, it's gonna catch on. Now, I'm 25 years in New England. May not be no whole big old crowd. We'll come to an event. All right, yeah, no Kings. We had 12,000, 15,000 here in Hartford. Right? You all had 6,000, 7,000 down there in Stanford. We'll show up to a day. But if we're talking about something that's sustained, that's going to mean, as in all of our congregations all got started not because the crowd made it go. It was the faithful few, right? And what sustains those congregations over the times, over the decades, is clearly the faithful few. What do you all hope to achieve as you continue to gather?
Well, I want to lift up that we are one piece of many, that actually there are people doing this work. You mentioned before, Bishop, all of the different immigrant groups across the state that were doing it. And I think I've seen people from many different groups growing in coalition together, delivering food to people who are afraid to leave their homes, for example, showing up in court for court accompaniment, showing up when there is an ICE arrest to take videos, speaking out. So being a part of this larger movement, the clergy and the faith leaders and the faith communities are one piece of something. And I think we're an important piece because we have a megaphone. I mean, we have a platform. People, we get up there on, Friday night or Sunday or whenever we're speaking to our congregations. And then we're speaking in the public square now too. So people listen. So we're using our voices. And I think though that there are many people doing the work, and we just want to see that grow so that people are not sitting back, so no one can turn away, right? And then people, I mean, at the moment, migrants are being scapegoated, and this is what's happening in America. That right, the people that are being grabbed and pushed on the ground and taken away from their families, most without criminal records, are being scapegoated, so we don't have to look at the real hard facts of this country and all of the criminalization that's actually in the White House, for example. We don't have to look at equality in other systems. We can find someone to blame. So there's, to wake up. That was King's message. Wake up. I think that's our message too. We want more people to join in and to notice and to get involved, so we can do something. So.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go right ahead.
No, I just wanted to echo what Terry said, and also say, like, for me, in addition to that, I think that what we're doing in these gatherings. First, I love what you said, Bishop, that it creates a space for sustained involvement and sustained action that transcends, individual gatherings, which I think is really important. And there may be more organized action that comes out of these gatherings as we get to know one another and come together regularly. And that is, as Terry was speaking there, I was like, well, what we're creating. We're building a church together. We're building a synagogue together. We're building a faith community, a community of faith and conscience together. And just that building of community together, I think, is important, right? There's both the solidarity that we're expressing with targeted communities and targeted individuals, and solidarity that we're expressing with one another. I think it's one of the great tools of authoritarianism and of oppression and injustice is to make people feel isolated and alone, right? To have me be at home saying like, I think what's happening is wrong, but nobody else seems to be saying or doing anything, so maybe I'm the crazy one, And when we gather together, we form those bonds of solidarity and encouragement with one another, and say, no, like there are other people here who are who see this for what it is, and that is empowering and encouraging and strengthening for one another. So that's solidarity in lots of directions. And I think to echo what Terry said, our hope, I think, of what we're doing here is that we'll begin to shift conversation. We'll introduce and amplify this moral language to bring into the conversation, at least locally, so that we're not just talking about, well, it's left versus right. This is what the administration says, and this is what the Democratic leadership says, and here's what the law says, and whatever. And say, let's cut through all that noise. Let's talk about what's right and wrong. Let's talk about what's faithful, what's unfaithful. Let's talk about what's just and unjust. And then to inspire one another into moral courage, to inspire, hopefully, others who may be listening, whether they be our, congregants, parishioners, all of our networks, public officials, neighbors, institutions, to lift up their voices as well, to give them a permission structure to say, we, members of the community, hopefully valued, trusted members of the community with our own congregations, that we're concerned citizens, and people of conscience and faith, we're not crazy radicals. Some of us maybe, but some may call me that from time to time. But we're regular folks, who see what's going on and see that's wrong. And I think that if we, continue showing up together and raising our voices in that way, it I think is encouraging. I hope it will be encouraging for others to, whether they be, average citizens or leaders, even, law enforcement officials, et cetera, to begin to, think in those terms of faith and conscience as well.
So I would, Thanksgiving just happened, right? And many of our faith communities brought all the cans and the cereal and the macaroni and cheese, out for hungry people. And, people did get animated when the government shut down around people needing food, right? That became a story, right? A storyline. So when people do acts of charity, like bringing the food forward, that's one thing. But asking why are people hungry is the next thing, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what I think I would hope. And I completely agree with Terry. There are people doing things all around this issue, and it's not just this is a way, not the way, right? But when you see a family torn apart, when you see a parent being dragged into the street and their children are crying, we want to comfort them. And there are organizations doing that, showing up with food and trying to provide support to those families. But I think we've got to then ask, what is happening? And who has the power to change it? How does systemic change take place? And that's a conversation that I would hope, as we go along and learn from each other. We're brand new, we're babies, right? We're 5 weeks in. I would hope that we would continue to go down the road of not just, not, and I don't mean just, but witnessing the way we are. I would hope we will develop and become companions in the journey of working for changing policies. The Trust Act, as an example of that here in Connecticut. The idea of trust is a faith word, if you really think about that. And it hasn't gone far enough. And that's one place where we can advocate. We would rather see ICE not allowed on the grounds of the courthouse, not allowed in the garage, under the cover of darkness, where they did their work in Stamford recently. Terry was there to see it with her own eyes. We need to press for those policy changes, to talk to our folk, to mobilize them. Because that's what happens once you see it, you can't unsee it.
And to your point, I know we're referencing Dr. King. I guess he's walking with us a little bit. His memory presence is with us. The issue in Montgomery first, and then in Birmingham, which became a national issue, quite frankly, was around due process. Well, isn't this the very thing this immigrant issue calls into question? What
Yes.
does it mean to have due process?
Mm-hmm.
You quoted a statistic, and I'm going to add to it. Most of the people that are getting arraigned, sustained, held, and all of that are actually citizens. They're in the process, right? It boggles my mind that there's advocacy for some around the process and due process, and then there's advocacy not for others. Here's the other thing that I think is also at play: this idea of citizenship to begin with, which is kind of funky for me, right? And you know, for a good deal of time, Black folk wasn't even human, right? So we had to put an amendment on the Constitution, right? That created, in fact, birthright citizenship, for example, right? That's embedded in the 14th Amendment. And now that's being called into question legally, right? So while yes, our moral range must be pretty high. What is right and wrong? Faith says we gotta stand for what is right and can play out as we understand governance. And there's something that don't smell right to be you just brown and you can just be, you know, harassed and picked up, you know, driving while Black, you know, walking while brown, going into a building while brown. It's something that's not that we ought not to stand for. So bearing witness has something to do with presencing ourselves in the midst of that. And I can tell you one other thing: when you have a bunch of people looking, it kind of calls into question what you as the individual, the agent of the government, the agent of law enforcement, it calls them into question. And I have seen with my own eyes when a number of faithful come out and stand in the gap, stand in the way. Well, then we can maybe shift what actually happens. And I think for me, the hope is what is advocacy can move into that which actually helps to change policy, get some due process where that's been challenged, and this idea of what I'm going to call really, I am called radical, but Michael, I am. I own it
too. Yeah.
Yeah. I own it every now and then, but you know, that's the way it goes. This what I'm going to call radical advocacy. That you know, listen, before you hit them, hit me. Come take me, and that's happened to me a couple of times. And I've had the great grace to Ken Salati and I at least once or twice been shoved around a little bit and carted off.
We did our time, though.
We did do our time. That's exactly right.
Well, I mean, that's right, Bishop. Faith is radical, and our traditions, I think, call us to be radical and to affect a radical reorganization of the broken and oppressive societies in which we live. So, I think that's really important to lift up. And we also, I'm glad that you brought this up. We have been for the past several weeks, including prayers for ICE agents and other law enforcement officers, that their conscience is awakened as well. There's a really beautiful story in the Talmud that one of the great rabbis of the ancient world, a rabbi named Rabbi Meir, he was always harassed by some like hooligans on his way home from the study hall every day. So he would come home and pray that God would strike them down dead. And his wife, Bruria, overhears him once and says, why are you praying for them to die? And he says, because they're bothering me, they're harassing me. I don't want them to do it anymore, so I'm praying for them to die. And she says to him, well, don't pray for them to die, pray for them to repent. Because if they repent and they change their ways, then they won't bother you anymore. So he prays for them to repent. God opens their hearts, they repent, and he never experiences the problem again. So that's what we're also, we're not just. We are doing some preaching to the choir. The choir's got to hear what they believe, be reinforced in their faith every now and again. But also hopefully people who are not necessarily inclined to see things the way that we are, but maybe we'll do some softening and opening of hearts. And this is being broadcast live, so I'll say Ken, and I've been talking about this, and Terry too. We would be happy to meet with the local ICE agents and other federal law enforcement who are in our area. We'd love to sit down and talk and hear from you and be able to share our perspective as well. So that's really important. I mean, we want to awaken everyone's conscience. And the one other thing that I want to add here, which is escaping me at the moment, so I'm going to shut up and maybe it'll come back to me.
That's all right.
That idea of meeting with ICE agents came as part of one of our conversations at a Moral Monday.
Yeah,
and we've got a practice of anybody that wants to speak can speak, which is always a challenge, right? You never know what someone's going to say. But a gentleman got up and basically challenged us, right? Challenged us to say, don't give up the idea that you can meet with ICE face to face and have a conversation to get that perspective. It's the Brian Stevenson proximity thing, the way ICE is publicly portrayed is that's the last thing they're going to want to do with their masks and not revealing their identities. But there is a field office in Hartford, and we're gonna do our best to see if we can get a sit down to talk to some people about what we've been doing and what we see, and to listen to them as well.
Listen, there is a reminder. I'm sorry, Rabbi.
No,
there
please.
is a reminder that we've had recently in the national news. There's been a commercial that got put together that talked about those who are serving in their armed forces, that if you're given an order that's not right, that's not legal, then you have the legal right to disobey an illegal order.
Mm-hmm.
I think in much the same way we can turn and say, this is not right, ICE agents. That's a citizen of the United States. These are human beings, and they need to be treated as such. And you, while doing your job, you don't have to break the law and break God's law, more importantly, as far as I'm concerned.
I think it's a radical humanization that we are doing the opposite, seeking to lift up the humanity of migrants, everyone, as well as ICE agents. And in the sense that, when you are doing this to somebody else, you're harming yourself as
Yes.
well as the other person. And seeking to recognize the humanity of all the people involved. And so that's, as I'm thinking about our role in this, is not only to be against something, but also to be for something. And what is the world we want to see? What is the world that we are trying to hope for, create together? And I think that is also the prophetic witness. It's a moral witness, and it's also a prophetic witness of, we want to move into something together to change these systems, these oppressive laws, and to create something better where the humanity of all people matters.
Yeah, and that I think really dovetails with what now I remembered I was going to say before, which is, if the administration, law enforcement is able to deprive citizens, legal residents, of due process, on suspicion that they might be illegal, based basically solely on their appearance. They can do that to anybody for any reason, right? There's really nothing stopping an ICE agent from, detaining me, not inviting that, but detaining me and saying like, you don't look like a citizen, you're coming with me, and sending me to a gulag somewhere, or deporting me, or whatever it is. It's not. I mean, it's basically what is already happening, and we I think need people to understand that when one group is targeted, that dehumanization, that stripping of humanity, citizenship, and humanity of a person doesn't stop with that person, that group, that community. It's present throughout history. My own people's history testifies to it. Bishop, you talked very movingly about the Black experience in this country as well, in a very similar kind of vein. So we need people to understand that just because Black and brown people who appear not to have been born in this country are being targeted now, that doesn't mean that it's going to end with them, and so that they have a self-interest in this too, even if they don't feel aligned or solidarity with their neighbors and community members who are currently being targeted. They need to know that their life and liberty is at stake as well. You cannot have a system, and I watched The Simpsons, and on the courthouse of Springfield in The Simpsons, it says equality and justice for most. Right, but you can't have that, because who gets to decide who gets equality and justice and who most is? Inevitably, you will be in the minority that doesn't get equality and justice if it's decided. So you can't have that. You have to have equality and justice for all.
That's absolutely right. I think we got just a few minutes left, and again, thank you all for being willing to come and share and talk about the work that you're doing. Listen, what we're asking people to do is to commit to something. Ask the question, where am I called? If we're talking about faith, and we're faithful folk, where am I called to stand in this particular struggle? What's the gifts I've been given that I've been hiding? Where's the way that I can show up, right? And what I've been encouraging folk to do, join something. I don't care what it is. Write a check, go past the ATM, get your phone out and take a picture of that QR code and put some money on it somewhere, some group, some organization, somebody's advocating. Get busy, show up something, go to a committee meeting. I mean, do something. You can't just stand around talking, yapping. You gotta embody. Faith is embodied, right? So, and then lastly, for me, it's about what do we spend our time doing. And I was in Bridgeport the other night at the NAACP Greater Bridgeport branch, NAACP chapter, and one of the things One of the things I suggested to them is, as an observation only, and I can talk about what I'm in, but we can draw them on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday between Muslims, Jews, and Christians. We can draw them into our four walls on them days and feel like we're very powerful until Monday comes. And we can't get 20, 30 people to show up to nothing. That's just an observation. That's just an observation. And yet it feels very weak. But here's the faith part of it. It just takes a couple of them, right? The Christian story of Pentecost, Rabbi, is that there was about 120 people gathered in an upper room, and then there was a sound from heaven, and boom, there was a rushing of the mighty wind, and all of a sudden, God got to moving. Well, I mean, there's been some of that raw that's been going along all throughout spiritual history, right? So it feels like to me, if there's ever a time now to invest and then turn around and say, hey, come to a meeting with me. Come show up at this thing. It ain't but 15, 20 minutes. And I know it's cold outside. Let me buy you a scarf. Let me let you borrow one of mine. And just show up at a thing. Over time, I believe we can make a difference. And it should that not be what we are all engaged in, that we're building. The theme for the Bridgeport NAACP's event was called Let's Build Power Together, right? Let's do that thing together. And I think ultimately that's what we're trying to do. Yeah, any closing words? I know I can preach because I am a preacher. Thanks. Any final words any of you want to say? Hearing none. It sounds like
Thank
some
you.
of them.
Yeah,
John.
thank you for
Just
inviting
thank you.
Thank you for your support. What we didn't say in the beginning was when we were looking what we were going to name ourselves, we decided to ask the bishop if we could be a part of the Moral Monday in Connecticut, and he graciously said, of course. So we're grateful to you for your support. You've been to a Moral Monday already with us, and you're welcome at any time.
I'm coming back. I'm just praying that when I come, God send the heat wave. 30 degrees is about. That's right. That's about good right now.
We've had a little rain, a little snow, and
we have
that little sunshine peeking through. Right.
That's right. Listen, this is what I believe God is calling for all of God's people, to get involved and get engaged. And it is time now, not just to talk, or to complain, or to here's my term these days, chirp. All of us can chirp. We can just chirp about whatever. But it's also about what do you use your ability, your power, your personal power, to engage with other folk who have power, that then helps us to create real power, right? It is that connects us over and against what divides us. And I think I'm preaching to the choir. In our faith traditions, we all have this element of we're better together, and that's what this work is about. Thank you all for joining us, and listen, folk. On Mondays from 12 to 1 o'clock at Stamford at the state
Superior Court.
The Superior Court. It's the state court thing down there. Yeah. It's up on the hill around the corner. You got to find it, but find it.
123 Point Street.
That's right. There it is. There
Point
it is.
Street.
If you want more information, go to moremondayct.org. We have a whole big old thing. You'll find information about where to go, what to do. And we appreciate you three and the others who are leading this effort. Thank you again for joining us. And listen, in a month or so, we're gonna call you back for for an additional report. Let's call it
All right.
the word from on the ground. That's it. That's
Right.
that we'll look for it. All right. Blessing everybody. We'll see you next time. Same bat channel, same bat time. You can tell I'm a child of the 60s and I was influenced. Batman still reigns supreme. All right. Adam West. All right. Blessings to you all. We'll see you. Peace.
Blessings. Peace.